Please be seated. Before I begin, I would like to thank from the bottom of my heart Dawn Victoria for her gracious and generous invitation to me to be allowed to speak to you today about Val. Val did something for me that no one else ever did. And I'm not talking about how she taught me about the Krampus. Yes, she did teach me about this fascinating, mythical, anti-Santa Claus and how parents in Europe would try to frighten their children into good behavior with the threat of the Krampus. I had fun with her about that Krampus legend ever since, but that's not what I mean. No, I've been a priest for almost 40 years, but a couple of weeks ago, I got a gift from Val that I've never experienced before. Her son William found a sealed letter addressed to me, and he thought he should send it to me without opening it, so he did. I have never before received a letter left to me by someone I loved after their death. This is what Val wrote. Dear Father Mark, I'd like to ask one more favor of you. Please include the passage from 2 Timothy 4, chapter 6 and 7 in the celebration of my life. That's not why it was read. She'd already made arrangements. Dawn Victoria did that. But she said, thanks for doing this for me. Most of all, I thank you for your wonderful friendship through the years we've known each other. The fun, the laughs, the sad times. You were there for me. May God bless you and your family with many more years of joy and happiness. Love and prayers, Val. This is why we all love Val. She would always spread love and good cheer to the people around her. This note means the world to me, but this is just one small example of the way she made people around her feel good. You could not fail to smile when you were around Val. She was always a ray of sunshine. She was one of my life's joys. And what a life she had. All of us who knew her and loved her were amazed by her life story. She walked hundreds of miles. She walked hundreds of miles in Europe as the Second World War was ending to escape the Russian occupation. Eventually, she became a citizen of this country. And even though she had a Hungarian accent to the end of her days, an accent I just loved to hear, she worked hard to learn English, and she did it well. I loved what she once told me about how she used comic books to learn English because the pictures helped her with the words. The word resilience applied to Val more accurately than to almost anyone I know. She was resilient. And of course, we'll never forget the cakes. The cakes, the cakes. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Everybody loved Val. I used to pick up the church mail every day at the Chenango Bridge post office. I enjoyed talking to the postmistress. And every once in a while, she would say to me, that wonderful little Hungarian lady from your church came in today. She is so sweet. Everybody loved Val. Of course, we who are her friends have suffered a loss, but it's her family who have suffered the greatest loss. She loved her family fiercely. Our conversations always included her talking about you. She was so proud of you. Kids, grandkids, great-grandkids. When you had difficulties, she worried about you and she prayed for you. And her love for you came through all her talk about you. Now, I called it fierce love because her love was pretty fierce. I would not want to be her kid and have her mad at me. But I was jealous of her descriptions of those Saturday morning breakfasts. So many of you crammed into her tiny apartment. I could always imagine it. crowded, but with laughter and good food and teasing and a tangible love. You were all so lucky to have her as a mom and a grandma and a great-grandma. Now, over the years, I keep having to ask Mandy this Hungarian word she used to call Val. It means grandma, and I think it's nudgy. I'm better at French than Hungarian. But I did learn how to pronounce Val's maiden name, Deveni. You see, every November in church, we would remember the people we loved who have died. People would give me the names of the ones they wanted to remember, and it was a long list. And I wanted to pronounce the names correctly because it was such a tender day. Val always had her parents and other relatives on the list, so every year I practiced so that I could pronounce Deveni correctly. And on one of those Sundays, when we remember the dead, I got Val's permission to tell a story from her in my sermon. She once told me about a sort of a vision she had. She was here in church. Now, she and Leslie always sat in that pew right over there. They always sat there together. And in this vision experience she had, she was sitting in church, and all of a sudden, everything sort of opened up. And the walls were open, and there was this glorious light, this green and gold light streaming in everywhere. And all the people she knew from church who had died were sitting in their pews, gloriously alive. It was a marvelous image, and it stayed with me ever after. And she gave me permission to tell it in a sermon one year when we remembered the people we love who have died. And now she's one of the people we love, but see no longer. Val died in her sleep. Because of her lifelong respiratory ailments, I was always really concerned that in her final months and weeks and days, she might be gasping for breath. But she died very gently in her sleep. God had mercy on us. And I mean on us. If she had had a long, lingering struggle, Val, being Val, would have endured it with strength and the resilience she always displayed in life. It's just how she was. But God had mercy on us because it would have tortured us to see her fight so hard for breath. She was given the gift of a gentle, peaceful death in her sleep. Leslie, of course, was in the same unit at the home. After all those years of living in apartments close together in Ely Park, at the end of Val's life, Leslie was still close by, and ideal in the same unit. And Leslie told me about one of the aides in the facility. His name is Sam. And every night, Sam visited Val, and as a person of strong faith, he would pray with her. They would sit and they'd talk and they would pray. Val told Sam all about herself. Now, Leslie says Sam is the kindest man you can imagine. The first or second time Sam and Val spoke, Val said to him, "You're one of them." And Sam told Leslie he was never quite sure what she meant. But I know what she meant. Val meant that Sam is one of those people, one of those mysterious angels who keep the world going because of their kindness and their service. Val recognized an angel in disguise. And their times together in the evenings with talk and prayer meant so much to her. Sam told Leslie something else. On her last day, Val said to Sam, "You're a good man, but it's time for me to go to the Lord." And that night she died in her sleep. That final interchange between Val and Sam goes right to my heart, and I hope it does to yours too. So Val said to be sure that these words from the second letter to Timothy were part of today's celebration. She wanted verses 6 and 7. The time for my departure is near. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Perfect for Val, don't you think? But in her note to me, she stopped there. She only requested verses 6 and 7. I think she stopped there out of humility. Maybe she didn't think she deserved the words from verse 8. But I think she does. I would also claim verse 8 for my friend Val. The words that follow what she wanted are these. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. Val, being Val, was too modest. Yes, verses 6 and 7 apply to her, but so do the words of verse 8. If anyone gets a crown in heaven, Val deserves one. If anyone gets a crown in heaven, Val does. Val, as we all know, was tiny. When I first met her, she made me feel like a giant. But as I got to know her better over the years, I began to feel like a midget next to her. If she was such a small person, why? Why does she leave such a big hole in our hearts? Val was a strong woman, a faithful woman, a fierce woman, a resilient woman, and above all, a loving woman. If anyone gets a crown in heaven, Val does. I would crown her a queen of love any day of the week. May Val go from strength to strength in God's home of peace and joy. We love you, Val.
The Apostles' Creed